The Almost Daily Zencast presents Good Morning Trumptopia's special coverage of Super Tuesday, 2020 Election Madness. Welcome back to the show, folks. I am your ever humble, ever eccentric, ever authentic, and totally genuine fictional character, hosting his own audio blog, podcast, sci-fi opinion talk show about the robots from the future and the 2020 election. It's mostly 2020 election today, not so much robots in the future. How's about that creepy Uncle Joe Biden landing a solid win on the projections heading out of Super Tuesday into not so Super Wednesday. Back to real life, grinding away at that day job Wednesday. But respects to the numbers. Here they are, top of the morning. Joe Biden with 453 delegates. Bernie Sanders in a strong second place, 382. 50 delegates over there with the Elizabeth Warren in a not-so-strong third place. And even sillier, a Michael Bloomberg finally scoring some points on the board after blowing through wads of cash like it just don't matter, which I guess to him it doesn't, because, he's having fun. He's getting to run for president. Yay. 44 points. All that according to the free widget on the internet and other places that I have checked. It's too early in the morning. And as I am trying to quit coffee, now most of the morning is way too early in the morning. Word to the wise, if you're not currently addicted to coffee, don't make yourself so. It's not worth the lifetime of pain and suffering. Despite all the delightful things in your mouth that the coffee does. I digress. I think that if you asked your average Bernie Sanders supporter, there's probably, and I could be wrong here, but there's probably a mix of optimism and, there goes the system screwing Bernie Sanders yet again. But then again, this was a pretty clean contest. I mean, there's still a ways to go, right? It takes 1,991 delegates to win the nomination. And right now they're neck and neck at less than 500. So the next several states are key. And truth of the matter is that California and Texas were there for Bernie Sanders. So, that's interesting. And the rest of the institutional move to coalesce around Joe Biden isn't really all that surprising. It's just sort of like, meh, but then again, he did pull through. He is right there on the numbers. You know who never was? Tom Steyer, Michael Bennet, John Delaney, Deval Patrick, Andrew Yang. Tulsi Gabbard is trailing the field dead last, already out of the running, of course, with one delegate. And that was a question I wrote down to myself yesterday, the day before. What happens to these delegates now? Tulsi Gabbard's, Amy Klobuchar's 7 delegates, good old Mayor Pete Buttigieg and his 26 delegates. Like, are they just locked? out of play, or did they get redistributed somehow? I don't know. A question for the ages, or for the internet, if I decided to get really, busybody today. But I feel like I got run over by a truck in my sleep, so I don't know how fast I'm gonna jump on that searching for things just yet. What I did want to share and talk about this morning is, the fascinating power move that indeed was Joe Biden looking at a map that one of the Apple news things does, read in Apple News Spotlight. Don't sue me. The map from last night. It's pretty interesting. They picked a weird velvety purple that's not quite my purple, more of a maroon. We got, Texas, Oklahoma, that one state next to Oklahoma, and all these other states going all the way to the East Coast. Massachusetts. Maine is still stripy. I guess it's not all the way in yet. And North, I think that's North Dakota. It's the one over there. I don't know the states, man. I'm a robot from the future. What do you want from me? How many of you can name every single state just by sight? I bet a lot of you can, but I bet a lot more of you can't. But what was fascinating to me, more so than just the raw turnout, is the way it gets distributed. But in terms of raw popular vote, Joe Biden came in pretty strong with 36.1% of the vote, right? Bernie Sanders came in pretty strong behind him, 29.3%. That isn't horrible. But that is also a pretty decent spread. And in terms of, if 15% is supposed to be the sort of presumed viability boundary, what's going on? Bloomberg, are you gonna back out? It's funny, all on the news, I was checking in throughout the day, and all the day before and the day of, it was Bloomberg responding, I think it was the same, two different pieces of tape, just getting looped 1,000 times, but Bloomberg responding to people asking him if he was ready to step out and coalesce behind whoever he would get behind. And he was just well, Joe Biden's taking votes for me. He wasn't ready. But looking at this widget here, if it's accurate, it's reporting 89% of the total vote reporting, right? And hopefully, I think that's going to get to 100% by late tonight, my time, because of Pacific Standard. Joe got one of the numbers just flipped and got a little bit updated. But Joe Biden's still at 36.1%, Bernie Sanders 29.3%, Michael Bloomberg at 13.7%. So and Elizabeth Warren 13.2%. Out of 12 million votes, all divvied up. Right? That's 12,180,600 total votes. Yes. So, while that's still gonna either Joe's gonna take an even bigger lead in the popular vote, which will be a bit of a smack to Bernie Sanders if he does on Super Tuesday, because Super Tuesday was the linchpin, right? Is there still a path? Yes. Would it be interesting to get to the convention and have an infamous, quote, brokered convention? I'm kind of hoping for it, personally, because, satirically and sort of sardonically, maybe even a little sarcastically, I think of politics as entertainment, like WWE. But it's also real. I'm not trying to dismiss. I've given my speech, my spiel about how I understand that politics has real impact. In fact, that's one of the episodes I'm going to go through and do a bit of a polish and updraft, and maybe do a little bit of post contemporary commentary back on it if I find something worthy of rambling at length about. But if that's supposed to be, okay, back to the central question I was trying to ask myself in terms of discussion. If 15% is supposed to be the marker, and we take the number, I think this is for all of Super Tuesday, right? It's got all the states all lumped together in one big map, and like the numbers. Then Mikey Mike Bloomberg didn't cut it and should drop, right? Like, let's look at each state. We can now, this is a neat widget, we can look at the whole state. 95% of Alabama is in. Joe Biden with a strong lead, 63%. And Bernie Sanders in a very weak second at 16%, barely above the 15% line of viability, right? So I encourage people to look into this. And check it out for themselves. I'm not going to flip through every single card because that'll take like an hour and I'll sound like a boring tard. But Arkansas, obviously, you've seen the reporting. If you're into this and you like to follow, you've seen the reporting and you know what states were won by whom. With 79%, I will kind of dip into the numbers here because it's my home state. At 79% of total vote reporting, Bernie Sanders is in the lead with 33.6% of the popular vote in California. Joe Biden had some strong turnout in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 counties way up north, sort of near the Bay Area into Humboldt County swath, but like off to the side, the ones close to Nevada. It's like this weird archipelago of districts or counties that Joe Biden seems to have won. But he's trailing behind Monsieur Sanders at 24.8% of the vote. So this kind of stuff, even in Colorado, he came in a pretty strong 23%. But there, Bloomberg, viability above the 15 in Colorado. Interesting. Not quite at it in California. I think Bloomberg was really counting on winning a list, that would be the combined amount of... What's fun to see as I flip through, Oklahoma's a solid Joe Biden state. It's 100% colored counties for Joe Biden. But all the other ones are a couple of... there's a couple of counties there. In most of the other states, like Texas is a pretty mixed bag, and although Biden definitely won at 33.6%, Bernie Sanders came in with a strong showing there at 30%. So that's a pretty close race right there. And Bloomberg is at 14.7, so not quite at the viability threshold, right? In other states, curiously, he makes it. Bloomberg does. It's fascinating. Oh, huzzah. That was up in the air last night when I went to bed. Bernie takes Utah, 34%, 34.6%. And Joe Biden, dangerously low, almost down to the 15% at 17.1%. But both Bloomberg and Warren skating in at above 15% at Utah. Utah, you crazy state. Trying to keep the big quad ticket going. Interesting stuff, right? And of course, like any sports ball event, like any Vermont, 50% of the vote goes straight to Bernie and 22% to Biden. A Elizabeth Warren eked out ahead of Bloomberg there. Good times. But Bloomberg came in with a 9.4% of the vote. The numbers are just fascinating to flip through and to study and to look at. And it's like no wonder that we have a whole huge industry of, political commentary that people can aspire to participating in their professional careers, right? So that bit was interesting, and so was the total numbers of Doodle Dads awarded out. Why did I close that? No, here it is. I didn't close that. 453 to 382. What happens to all these other things? Like, eventually, let's have some real talk. Eventually, Elizabeth Warren's going to have to drop out, right? And then we will have already, hopefully we'll find out relatively soon, who Joe Biden's going to pick as a running mate. And whether or not Bernie's going to try to take it to the mat all the way to the convention, or if he's going to feel the pressure of good old Joe as he kind of lurches forward. I don't mean to sound critical. I just don't know that I'd love to see a fair and square fight to the finish, right? And I don't want to see like Bernie's campaign waffle preemptively, unnecessarily, because of some sort of predetermined sense of, I give up. The system's corrupt, and they're going to put their thumb on the scale for Biden like they put their thumb on the scale for Clinton, and we're going to lose to Trump because of it, right? And then people walking away. And in fact, I wonder how many states are left, and I doubt that I have listenership in any of them, but because my show seems to be more of an international audience. But I wonder if I were a national influencing show, if I were huge in Trumptopia, right? Like if I was some sort of open secret underground like phenom, where it's like I'm famous for being like not famous but famous, or whatever, enough to influence stuff to like inspire people. I'm like, all right, remainder of all you, because let's look at some of this. Let's think about some of these things, right? Like the population of any of these states is way bigger than the total votes, right? Like I guess I'd have to check it out. What is the population? Voice has been turned off. I can't ask my widget to widget a thing for me. Total population of Virginia. These stats, for future reference, historians, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo says, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo can't pronounce his own name some days, especially first thing early in the morning after a rough night of sleep. a rough night of sleep. Like, it's 324,009 total votes for Virginia. But there's more than 1 million people in Virginia, right? There's more than 2 million people in Virginia. I reckon it's up there towards like 3 million, right? Easy. So as I was pondering in a previous segment, like America's largest voting bloc literally is all you non-voters. And what are you doing? What do you want to do this year? I thought we had a tacit, secret, subconscious agreement that 2020 was the year that all the non-voters, a good plurality, a good 60 to 70% of the non-voters would just roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty and see what would happen if they just participated in the voting process. I've been advocating that maybe sort of way too absentmindedly and not consistently enough on my podcast show for at least 2 years, maybe even the whole 3 years. I remember one of the videos I made before I was like, fuck, I'm not going to make videos every week. That's too exhausting because it takes 3 weeks to make a video. So if I'm going to do a video every week, I'll have to travel backwards in time like 10 years to get them all done. So a podcast was just hit record and ramble. Whatever condition I'm in, whatever state of mind I'm in, I'm just going to unload my thoughts and then edit it later someday in some sort of Herculean effort to keep it marketable. I digress. I made a video back in the day, right before I switched, both in English and in Spanglish, if I'm not mistaken, about just like flooding the system. And I don't know if anybody's really seen it. And I'm sure I've talked about it on the podcast since. But is it too late? If I had a nationally influential radio talk show, I'd be strongly, daily, on the daily, advocating, intellectually recommending the idea that you consider, hey, all you non-voters, get up in there and vote for Harry Potter. Well, maybe not Harry Potter. Maybe Bernie Sanders. Maybe, a cartoon character like Roger Rabbit, because who wouldn't want Roger Rabbit to be president of the United States? Wouldn't that be cool? If we just forced it and they're like, but we voted him. If we just had Donald Trump for 4 years, we can have Roger Rabbit. It'll work. Just somebody get busy with the CGI. What would happen if all of those, and I've been staring at my screen, willing the text to turn up. And of course it's not gonna, because my keyboard's way off to the side. Let's type in total population of USA, California, the world, of China, of Los Angeles, of Canada, of India. Those are the options that I got. Well, I want to do California. There it is, California. 2,957,496 votes. And that's 79% of the total vote. And that is total population of California. Get a lot of 39.94 million. Our current estimates, according to worldpopulationreview.com, our current estimate for California's population in 2020 is 39.94 million. At the last official United States Census carried out in 2010, the population of California was declared at 37,253,956, which makes the state the most populous by a wide margin, over second place Texas, 28 million. Okay. So, let that sink in. Trumptopia. How many people didn't vote in Super Tuesday? Because they don't believe in voting? Because they're convinced for a fact that it's useless? Because they hate the system and feel dirty? Because they just don't care? because it's too complicated, because of the wonderful things he does. That's from The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, for those who didn't know. Right? So like 2 million out of 39, almost 40 million people. There's a lot to be said there, folks. There's a lot to... And then the Electoral College, right? And then the Electoral College. So let's not even get that can of worms open. We're going to save that for another day. I want to thank you for tuning in, as always, folks. I feel like I actually really could, should, would wrap it up early today, because that's all I got to say about Super Tuesday. It went interestingly. It wasn't, honestly, Democrats and Bernie bros and, like, Feel the Burn folks and just everybody who votes. Ask yourselves, where was the blue wave? We could hem and haw in every contest before now. But truly, honestly, where's the political questioning? And I know some of the talking bobbleheads on TV probably are asking this question, and I don't want to get accused of just regurgitating what they're saying. I'm asking out of my own genuine interest. Where was the big blue wave? 2018, huge turnout. This is not rivaling. This is not giving that set of turnout numbers any kind of competition here. And Bernie and his coalition of supporters, y'all are powerful and awesome and well organized and really, really passionate. But still, the sort of bringing them in, the new folks, roping in the new folks, roping in the not so active voters. What's a little rough, what's a little sad, and I'm sure they've talked about this on the news too. I hate to sound unoriginal, but from what I've seen in the reporting of turnout and some of the polls and stuff, is that Biden, in some of the places where turnout was indeed approaching some sort of record-breaking level, it was places that the turnout was showing up in favor of Biden, not so much the burn. So now either there's going to be a late wave, or it's going to be generally flat, right? And what do those two things mean? What would a big blue wave mean, even if it was a lot of new voters, a lot of this largest voting bloc of America, non-voters, coming in to vote? What would it have meant to have been swept up, right? As I was talking about in a couple segments ago, in a ultimately like a Yang and Sanders ticket. A Sanders-Yang would have been fun, right? What will it mean now? I think that's a meaningful question, artistically. And I asked that out there mostly for the aspirational, and also, because it's not too late. Bernie Sanders shouldn't drop out of the race. Michael Bloomberg, arguably, probably should. And so maybe if Pete Buttigieg was so quick to drop out, and he was like the young, attractive, and in fully first, at least he got some cool first going for him, so that he wasn't just another angry old white guy, right? He would have been a great and awesome first for the LGBTQ community, and he might still be. Right? He might still come around and be queuing up to be selected as a running mate, because he was really trying to be like the centrist out of everybody, and everybody else was trying to be a noisemaker of like, I can punch Donald Trump with my words, And that's what was going on. And it was a crazy clown car show, just like the Republicans was that, 4 years ago. Or 3.5, almost 4 years ago. 5 years ago when they started. And it's curious how there's like echoes of the history and echoes of the past playing out. But Super Tuesday has led us to this to this sort of conclusion, I think, that indeed, I think too much of the actively voting public prefers some sort of return to the good old days of Obama being in office than some sort of adventurous, future-looking visionary response to Trump being in office. And as I have pointed out before, and will very likely point out again during the course of this, run up and jumping off a cliff. Ooh, a bunch of numbers just came in over here on the little widget. And thanks to the media that makes it possible to be able to look at those numbers for everybody. Like, you can go read these things for yourself if you've got this app or that app, right? And I'm not trying to infringe on anybody's intellectual property rights. This is all public domain knowledge. How am I supposed to do an opinion talk show about the news if I don't look at the news and the media, right? It's a conundrum. But I digress. If we were to add up the totals, taking that California example, it would be a wild number. Like, it's 12 million total, right, for Super Tuesday of people who voted. And just California alone is 40 million people. So that was just from California. There's still 30, 20 plus some odd million people who didn't vote. If you take that 12 million chunk out of, add up all the rest, and you see my point. And there's still quite a few states to go, right? If memory and the help of the internet is correct, and not omitting any small widgets of this country, we still have Idaho, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Washington, Arizona, Florida, Illinois, Ohio, Georgia, Alaska, Hawaii, Louisiana, Wyoming, Wisconsin, Connecticut, Delaware, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Kansas, Indiana, Nebraska, West Virginia, Kentucky, Oregon, the District of Columbia, Montana, New Jersey, New York, and New Mexico, and South Dakota. To get to that threshold, and to get all these delegates, these early delegates appointed, adjudicated, that's not the right word. What a different world might it have been if like a solid 30 million of California's population had turned out. And, what would that have been like? And I asked that of every state. What would that have been like? Contemplate that as we take a break from the show. We'll be back a little bit later talking about some more of this post-Super Tuesday observations and also other things. As always, my friends, thank you for tuning in and lending me your ears and some portion of your intellectual process. Think about these things, question, and wonder, what would the world be like if we did things a little differently?